Yeah, we're doing 2 lessons tonight, or 2 chapters. It's 1 lesson, but 2 chapters. You can feel the first one's pretty light. It's just a few pages. And oddly enough, we are in kind of working the same lesson material that the Sunday school has. So tonight, yeah, that's right. Well, it's back up here. They're saying that they condensed it down. They had a big lesson, and it was like 1 verse was the, what we're talking about. So we're getting a little more in depth. Number 17 is the budding of Aaron's rod. Verse 1 through 3 says, And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and take of every one of them a rod according to the house of their fathers, of all their princes according to the house of their fathers, 12 rods. Write thou every man's name upon his rod, and thou shalt write Aaron's name upon the rod of Levi. For 1 rod shall be for the head of the house of the fathers. Now, this is immediately following 16, where they had Korah and his group rebelled, got swallowed up in an earthquake. You had 250 that was also with Korah in rebellion. They got killed, zapped by lightning. And then you had the others that was supporting those. And the Lord went and started a plague out in 14,700 of them. So in this chapter, God says, like Randy was, okay, boys, I'm going to settle this. And that's what he said. Lord spake unto Moses. And he told each one of them, the heads of each of the tribes, to go get them a walking stick, basically. Okay? And a rod, something, and what is a rod? What is a walking stick?
Anything carved.
Could be carved, but what is it physically?
It helps you balance your walk.
It's a tree branch.
A tree, oh.
What kind of tree branch? It's dead. It's dead.
Dead tree.
Because it ain't growing no more. Okay, get you on the right subject here. And by Josephus, you'll go and read a little later, Josephus said Aaron's rod was from an almond tree. Okay, that'll play out here in a little bit. Don't know about the others, if theirs was the same or whatever. Okay? So a rod was a symbol of authority because the shepherds would use this rod to guide and correct the sheep. This was actually Moses' rod. Okay, Moses as a shepherd had a rod in his hand when he was tending the sheep in the wilderness. This later became known as the rod of God. So this is the one that he had when he did the plagues, touched the water, turned into blood. All the different plagues that they had, it turned into a serpent, and then ate up the other serpents, and then turned back into a rod. It's also the rod when they get started. We're not there yet, but when they start working, when they start fighting some of the people, he has to hold up his rod and his arms get tired. Joseph and Aaron hold his arms up to keep them from, losing because they let them down. So this is all the same rod, is what they think. This rod demonstrated Moses' authority in action, and kind of goes through each one of them. He parted the sea with them. It's also the rod he struck the rock with, that the water came out. In the same vein, or same shadow or type, Jesus is also called the rod. Okay? So, why so? Because, again, he's a shepherd. He is the leader of each one of them. And in order to not get each one of them mixed up, they wrote the names on them. Okay, this is your rod. We'll put this here. We'll put this there. So they knew each one of them, and they're kind of wondering, okay, what's going to go? What's happening? So Okay, Brother Everson, 4 and 5.
And thou shalt lay them up in the tabernacle of the congregation before the testimony, where I will meet you. And it shall come to pass that the man's rod, whom I shall choose, shall blossom, and I will make to cease from me the murmurings of the children of Israel, whereby they murmur against you.
Okay. So he's going to choose. See, all these people had thought they could do just as good as Aaron and Moses could. And that's what the whole thing started with. And God said, look, I chose them a long time ago. We're going to prove it now to you. Who, is the one that's chosen to do this. So they're going to take all those 12 rods. They're going to enter into the temple, of the tabernacle, and place them before the testimony. The way I understand that, that's the ark that they put that on there in front of them. Okay. So it's gonna blossom. That's what it says. A dead rod, a dead stick is gonna blossom. Now there's no way a tree would do that. Once a tree dies, a limb or something falls off. I think I may have told you a couple months ago, whenever we had that kind of lightning storm that come through. Well, lightning hit my house, not my house, thank the Lord, but hit my tree, my pine tree. And boy, the next month, it's losing leaves like crazy. So I started putting some fertilizer out and watering it and everything, and still losing leaves because it's getting fall and it's it's a pine tree, and they'll keep the pine needles on all winter, but it still loses a lot because those old pine needles are falling off. I hope it doesn't die because it's about a 40-foot tree. I'll have to have cut down if not. But anyway, there's no real way. That tree didn't die. It got damaged, and I can keep it alive, but the branch that fell out of the tree, it's dead. I can stick it in the ground and it ain't going to do a thing. Okay? Now, some of them you can splice a piece of a branch, a living piece of the branch off, and put it in another tree, graft it in, and it'll grow. But if it's dead, all the living material in it is gone. Now, the one thing they did say, that just to let you know, when lightning hits, it goes down, and the reason why it hits a tree is because the water is conductive in the tree. The tree itself, wood, is not really conductive, but the water in the tree is. And where is the water? It's right under the bark. Some of it's in the tree, but that's real dense. But right up against the bark, under the skin, that sap is made up a lot of water. And that's what happened. It instantly vaporizes that when that lightning hits, because it's like 1,000 degrees or something like that. It just blew that bark off everywhere. I picked up 5 gallons of bark. But it's in a line. It's probably no bigger than my hand. Probably 6 inches across, where that went down the tree. And it started at the top, jumped around the limb, and come down the branch, and went all the way to the ground. So there's still living tissue in that back part of that tree, and it's still living. So I'm going to try to keep it going. But once you cut a limb from a tree and let it lay out a couple days, it's not going to grow back. So this is going to be a miracle that this happens. It's going to show them that this tree limb, walking stick, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be a miracle. And he's going to rid himself from these murmurings. Well, you don't know Israel very well, but we'll see that comes up a little later. Okay, Iris, you want to read on the next page, 6 through 9?
And Moses spake unto the children of Israel, and every one of their princes gave him a rod apiece, for each prince one, according to their fathers' houses, even 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron was among their rods. And Moses laid up the rods before the Lord in the tabernacle of witness. And it came to pass that on the morrow Moses went into
not only blossomed, okay, the thing had blossoms on it. I mean, it sprouted, had some green sprouts out of it. A little bit later down, had blossoms on it, or flowers. And a little bit later, it had almonds. How long does it take to make nuts from an almond tree? It takes a while. You know, like pecans or anything like that.
Have we got almond trees around here?
Not around here. I don't know what, if they're more hot-natured or cold-natured. I'd have to look that up. I don't really know. But I've not seen an almond tree around here. But there are almond trees. And since I'm thinking, you know, this is in the Middle East, it's a hotter climate. So I think that's why they may have it. Now,
I think
we
they have to be raised.
we import most of our almonds, I think. I'm pretty sure we do. Now, Texas, California, they may have some there. But a lot of those we're importing, I'm sure, from like Brazil and all that stuff. But I don't know. And Brother Epperson will Google it for us and see here. So not only did God use a little miracle of budding an almond tree or a branch, had blossoms, blooms, and fruit there. That's proof. And you know, we brought it back out, and it has Aaron's name on it. Now, Aaron was for the tribe of Levi, and each one of the others, of course, had their own. So they looked at it, and they're like, oh my. You know, everybody looked at it, and of course, Moses and Aaron was fine with it. They saw what was happening. It said in Acts 1 and 3, God gave many infallible proofs to demonstrate his approval of Aaron's leadership. It takes it back to Acts 1 and 3. God gives us more than enough evidence. Our problem is a lack of willingness to see what he has made clear. That happens today. People are unwilling to hear the truth of what's going on. What does it say?
It says 80% of all the world's supply is grown in California.
There you go.
But it's mostly in Texas, Florida, Arizona, Hawaii. It looked dry, warm weather in the winters. In other words, not where it gets down below freezing.
Yeah, not here, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's just a regular, you know,
Looks like a regular tree.
pecan tree.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I think that's a big, yeah, it's a nut tree.
Says we're probably to understand that some parts were in bud, others had blooms, and others had fruited. Fruit was a godly leader that may come in all different stages. So even our ministers that we have today, here again it's talking about some are new, some are young, and then some are older, and they're bringing out a lot of fruit. You know, some are not, some don't have that. And it said at the bottom, behold, the rod of Aaron of the house of Levi sprouted. God's choice of Aaron did not mean that Aaron was the most spiritual man in the nation. God's chosen leaders will have godly character according to the principles of 1 Timothy 3, 1 through 13, and Titus 1, 5 through 9. But it wasn't a contest to determine the most spiritual among them. I mean, here again, Aaron was the one that built the golden calf. It shows us this is still, again, a type and a shadow of mercy that God had upon this family, upon Moses' family. They wasn't perfect. Moses wasn't perfect. He killed somebody. You know, and because of that, he left. It said each man took his rod. This was a dramatic scene, and each murmurer from the different tribes took his rod and clearly saw that his had not budded or borne fruit, and that Aaron's had. Now, I'm sure they probably have people, you know, to make this a blind test. They probably, all the men, the 12 tribe leaders, after he went in and put the rods down and came right back out, they probably sat there and watched that all night, you know, so that they would know nobody's touched those things. But the next morning when Moses went in and brought them out, I mean, he didn't take long. I'm sure he brought them right out. It was self-evident that God had chosen Aaron and his rod. Okay, Ruby, the next one, 10 and 11 on the middle of page 4.
Page 4.
And the Lord said unto Moses, bring Aaron's rod again before the testimony to be cast for a token against the rebels. And thou shalt quick make away their murmuring from me, that they die not. And Moses did so, as the Lord commanded him, so did he.
So they went and took, and this is one of the items that was left in the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, they took a pot of manna, they took Aaron's rod, they took the broken commandments, and the good commandments that was there too. So it's just to show them, okay, if you start murmuring again, I'll bring out this rod. Look there, it's still blue. I don't know if it continued to bloom or what it did, but it showed to them that God had chosen his group.
The Ark of the Covenant was something special.
Mm-hmm.
Because they kept that manna in it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before, if you gathered manna on the Sabbath day,
Right.
I mean, it molded and it melted, whatever.
Yeah.
But this manna, because it was special,
It
and
stayed
from
there.
God, I mean,
All these things God put in front of them, but yet they still didn't realize or didn't recognize, wouldn't believe it. And it's, I was reading on one account, and don't want to get too political, but it was in one of the accounts, and this person had said, so-and-so didn't do this, it actually, was so-and-so. Well, I went back and just Googled it. Sure enough, it was. I clipped that out, put it in there. I said, here, read this. But that don't help anybody because they won't believe it. They'll look, the media, they're all against us. Well, I don't know. You've got to believe somebody if you want to go back and, this is supposedly true. People have looked at it and, all these things. People they really just don't know what truth is what it amounts to.
and it's always, what have you done for me lately?
Today, yeah, I forgot about tomorrow. That's what the people did. You led us across the Red Sea.
That, man.
Yeah, you led us across the Red Sea. Oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that. It's just one of those things. So, on the next page, go ahead and read 12 through 13, Bertha.
And the children of Israel spake unto Moses, saying, Behold, we die, we perish, we all perish. Whosoever cometh anything near unto the tabernacle of the Lord shall die. Shall we be consumed with dying?
Okay. So they got a little upset. I mean, they got scared because they had murmured against God and they'd seen this, and now this is laying up. And it was true because they had the Korah had, this is kind of the conclusion of the Korah story, but it's not the conclusion of the murmuring. But they had 250 die, plus Korah and Dathan and Abiram, and then the 14,700 died in the plague. And people, they do sometimes. Something happens that's just unusual to them, and they get hysterical. Oh no, we're all going to die. How can anybody stand before this God? Well, they can. God told them what to do, how to do it, but yet they still refuse to listen. They don't want to listen. And I can gather that it takes 2.5 million people. It takes a few days for that to get around to the 2.5 million people that heard the stories, but I'm sure it traveled pretty quick. But God was merciful upon them during this. Now we can imagine these times when they weren't moving. Okay, this is when a time when they come to rest and they were getting ready to move, and God hadn't moved, so they were there and they were trying to figure this out. They got tired of waiting. Well, they just moved up there. They were supposed to go take the land. They didn't. They thought they were, God told us to take the land. They tried to take the land after God said, don't go up because you wouldn't do it when I told you to. And they got, wiped out. So now we go on, and it kind of talked a little bit about this in that chapter 17. It said nobody should approach the tabernacle. Okay, it said nobody. So now we're going to jump into 18. Verse 1 says, And the Lord said unto Aaron, Thou and thy sons and thy father's house with thee shall bear the iniquity of the sanctuary, and thou and thy sons with thee shall bear the iniquity of your priesthood. This is going to be their burden. Okay, it's not so much iniquity. A lot of times we think of as sin. This is because they were the priests, because they were chosen. Okay? Yeah, you get the good part. Everybody's scared to death of you because of that rod blooming. But now, you've got to carry out your duties. And you do have duties. Each one has duties in God's kingdom. So it says the priests, that is Aaron and his sons and their descendants, and the priesthood, they were accountable to God. This is the other side of Aaron's being chosen, as demonstrated with the budding of the rod. Moses had authority from God, but he was also accountable. Moses just couldn't go out there and do anything he wanted to. He was accountable to God. God was the one who told him, and God held him to that. Once we haven't got to the rock yet, once he whacked the rock instead of speaking to it, he was held accountable for that. He lost his privileges. Okay, Brother Everson, 2 through 7.
I love that one there where it says God never gives authority without accountability.
Right.
These two always go together. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
And thy brethren also of the tribe of Levi, the tribe of thy father, bring thou with thee, that they may be joined unto thee, and minister unto thee. But thou and thy sons with thee shall minister for the tabernacle of the witness. They shall keep thy charge and the charge of all the tabernacle. Only they shall not come nigh to the vessel of the sanctuary and the altar, that neither they nor ye also die. And they shall be joined unto thee, and keep the charge of the tabernacle of the congregation for the service of the tabernacle. And a stranger shall not come nigh unto you. And ye shall keep the charge of the sanctuary and the charge of the altar, that there be no wrath any more unto the children of Israel. And I, behold, have taken your brethren, the Levites, from among the children of Israel, to you that are given as a gift for the Lord to do service of the tabernacle of the congregation. Therefore, thou and thy sons with thee shall keep your priest office for everything of the altar and within the veil. And you shall serve. And I have given your priest office unto you as a servant of service of gift, and the stranger that cometh not shall be put to death.
Okay, now we don't know, here again, like I said, some of this is more or less in chronological order. And some of it's not, because we go back to Exodus, these rules was given to us already. Now they're just re-emphasizing it at a time when they needed it. They may not have been listening the first time. You ever had that happen? You're talking to somebody and then they look up and say, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening. Okay, I want you. It's almost now like you say, okay, I'm getting ready to talk to you. Are you listening to me?
Yeah.
Okay? Because they'll say, you never told that to me. I said right here 2 minutes ago and told you that. And you wasn't listening. You was watching television, listening, doing something. And we do that. I mean, I do that too. It's just something we do. You got to get our
I'm
attention.
just thinking of something else.
Yeah, you got to get somebody's attention, and then they shake their head and say, yeah, yeah, but they're not listening.
I'm not listening.
No, they're not on the same wavelength. So it gave that, okay, you have this responsibility. Don't get the big head, because you still have to do your work. There's work that only you can do. And then I've given you all the Levites to do the work of the keeping track of the tabernacle and taking it. They had the specific responsibilities of doing the sacrifices and going in and offering the sacrifices to God, to keep the candles going, to keep the bread before the Lord, to do all these things that they could do. But it said one thing, I don't know if you caught it in there, we want to keep everybody else from getting close to those vessels, because they will die and you will die. So if you're on watch and somebody gets close, it may be your turn to die too. So you get that in somebody, and that's kind of the way that, the Secret Service is with the president. They'll take the bullet for him. Supposed to. I mean, that's what they sign up for. Now they got jackets on and, bulletproof jackets and all that, but they're supposed to be conditioned so that they jump in front of the president if something comes up and happens. And we've seen that happen before with Reagan and, some of these others. They jump in the way. And then just recently with Trump, they jumped on top of him, got, all of them, where nobody could get to him. So this is what it's telling them. You don't get off scot-free. You've got all these things that you've got to do. You are special. You're my special people, that out of my people that I've chosen, you are the special people out of that group to serve me in this worship. Okay? Now all the people's going to be worshiping God, but they had a special service that they had to do. And we've gone over that. It's the sacrifices and all the different things that they've done. So the Levites weren't allowed to do what the priests did. In the same way, the New Testament says we are all different parts of the body, each particular gifts and callings. Some of us can preach. Some of us can teach. Some of us can wipe windows down. Some of us can cook. Some of us can call. Some of us are evangelists. Some of us are not. We do what we can do. Whatever God gives us to do, that's our gift. Okay, Iris, it's the next one. You want to read all that, or you want me to do it? Okay. 8 through 20. And the Lord spake unto Aaron, Behold, I also have given thee the charge of mine heave offerings. Okay, this is one of the offerings that they give. Of all the hallowed things of the children of Israel, unto thee have I given them by reason of the anointing, and to thy sons by an ordinance forever. Okay, now this heave offering was one that they took part of the shoulder of the ram or whatever, and they would lift it up to God with the offerer. Okay, it's a heave offering, and then they had a wave offering also. But because of this, they could eat. They would eat. The priest would take that. That's all. It wasn't sacrificed. I mean, it wasn't burnt. Some of the offerings it was completely burnt. Some of the heave offerings didn't. The shoulder, the priest got shoulder or thigh. They would offer the heave offering, and they'd give it back to give it to the priest for their part. The rest of the sheep they would give back to the person. So God did all this. It said, "This shall be thine of the most holy things, reserved from the fire." Okay, not burnt. Every oblation of theirs, every meat offering of theirs, and every sin offering of theirs, and every trespass offering of theirs, which they shall render unto me, shall be most holy for thee and for thy sons. In the most holy place shalt thou eat it. Every male shall eat it. It shall be holy unto thee. And this is thine, the heave offering of their gift, with all the wave offerings of the children of Israel. I have given them unto thee, and to thy sons, and to thy daughters with thee, by a statute forever. Every one that is clean in thy house shall eat of it. So these offerings is for the priest's families also. They can eat it, but they have to eat it in the temple area. It's kind of what I get out of it if you read through this. but they have to be clean. Not everybody is clean in the priest's family at the time, so the ones that aren't can't eat of it at that particular time. Then it goes on, all the best of the oil, all the best of the wine, the wheat, the first fruits of them which they shall offer unto the Lord, them have I given thee. Okay? Now it's talking about the first fruits and the things like that. And whosoever, whatsoever is first ripe in the land, which they shall bring unto the Lord, shall be thine. Every one that is clean in thine house shall eat of it. Everything devoted in Israel shall be thine. Everything that openeth the matrix in all flesh, which they bring unto the Lord, whether it be of men or of beasts, shall be thine. Nevertheless, the firstborn of man shalt thou surely redeem, and the firstling of unclean beasts shalt thou redeem. And those that are to be redeemed from a month old shalt thou redeem, according to the estimation for the money of 5 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary, which is 20 gerahs. And the firstling of a cow, and the firstling of a sheep, and the firstling of a goat, thou shalt not redeem. They are holy. Thou shalt sprinkle their blood upon the altar, shalt burn their fat for an offering made by fire, for a sweet savor unto the Lord, and the flesh of them shall be thine, as the wave breast and as the right shoulder are thine. All the heave offerings of the holy things which the children of Israel offer unto thee, the Lord, have I given thee, and thy sons and thy daughters with thee, by a statute forever. It is a covenant of salt forever before the Lord unto thee and to thy seed with thee. And the Lord spake unto Aaron, Thou shalt have no inheritance in their land, neither shalt thou have any part among them. I am thy part, thine inheritance among the children of Israel. So it condenses down kind of the duties right here into all this. It says, for this option that you get of being a priest, this is all what you do, but you still get some in return. These first fruits, basically the tithe, we talk about that, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit too. All the offerings, not the burnt offering. The burnt offering is a burn up completely. But all the other offerings, most of it's not burnt. Just the fat of that's burned, or a portion of it's burned. The rest of it is the priest. They can have that. Some of it goes back to the giver, both the priest and the person that's there. They can participate in that. Like I said, those were all, we've covered those before. We can go back and look at that. The unclean animals, okay, they're not going to be sacrificed. We talked about that before. They are to be redeemed. So offering is given for them. The first of those, okay, the firstborn of those. Now the firstborn of the sheep, cattle, goats, all those have to be sacrificed. The firstborn of each individual person is the Lord's. We've already talked about that. That they are to be redeemed, and because of their portion, the Levites are assumed to be that first fruits, the people, the actual people, number. We talked about that at the very first of Numbers. It's approximately the same amount, and then they did a little adjusting on the way as they went. So all these, it's telling them you're not going to have any land. You're not going to have places. It's not saying they're not going to have a house, but it's in the portion of your area. It'd be like a state for us. Okay, you guys, you're Oklahoma, you guys are Arkansas. And the Levites, you can live anywhere. Now, there's certain, in Israel, there were certain places that they told them they could live, but it's not their land. They were given a portion of it to build on so they could do the sacrifices and be there and serve, but they really didn't have title to this. And at the very end it says that this is a covenant. This is a covenant of salt. Salt is something that you use to purify, to keep it. We salt meat, okay, and it'll keep it from getting corroded or bad. Salt pork and the ham and the bacon, all that stuff. So this, it means that that's a permanent thing that's from generation to generation. It's going to be known. God's not going to break that. And it goes about and it talks about the oil and the wine, all these different things that is part of this first fruits. That's going to be part of theirs that they can have as doing this service. Okay? So, I mean, their work is doing what the Lord has told them to do in this piece. So, for that reward, the other people can go out, they can farm their lands, they can raise cattle, they can raise sheep, they can raise whatever they want, and they get to, all that. Now, being the first fruits, that's a little risky, because when you do your first cutting or your first, let's say like hay or hay or grass that they'll cut today, some years you can get one good cutting because it doesn't rain much or whatever. So if you have to give all that away and you don't get a second or third cutting, you're kind of out of luck. So it's a little risky, but the Lord says, you give me the first fruits and I'll take care of you for the rest. And that's what it does say in there. It's a covenant. It's gone for, it's, you give me that first fruits and I'll make all, just like the manna, just like everything.
People don't understand that.
That's right.
When it comes to tithing and giving.
Mm-hmm.
They expect to be blessed.
Right.
But they don't give their first fruit.
They don't give their first fruit.
And God can't truly bless it if you don't give your first fruit.
Right. Right. And it goes in here, his take on it is a little different than what I would say, but that's okay. He's a commentator, I'm not. So. And it talks about the salt, and it says, what a precious place to say, the Lord is my portion. It says, O Lord, you are the portion of my inheritance and my cup. You maintain my lot. That's Psalm 16:5. And it's just, again, placing all that into God's hands. So whatever we have, even when, like Samuel was given to Eli, his mother had to assume that Eli's going to take care of him, and raise him the way he's supposed to. It says, when God is our portion, he is our inheritance, our hope, who we trust for our future. We are satisfied in him. Since we are all a royal priesthood, we all have the Lord for our portion. So he's going to take care of us if we will just follow him. That following is hard to do. The Israelites found that out. They wanted to do, for 400 years they'd done their own thing, which is do what the Egyptians want to do. And for the next 200 and later, they only followed him for really a relatively short time, because as soon as they got big enough, they split into north and south, or Israel and Judah, and then Judah was the only one left. Israel got taken up into idolatry and all that. Anyway, we'll go on. Okay, tithes to the Levites, given to the Levites, and this is what I was talking about a little before. You want to read that one for us? You don't got to read it? Okay, I know he's coughing. Sorry. It's on page 5 for you.
And behold, I have given the children of Levi all the tenth in Israel for an inheritance, for their service which they serve, even the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. Neither must be the children of Israel henceforth come nigh the tabernacle of the congregation, lest they bear sin and die. But the Levites shall do the service of the tabernacle of the congregation, and they shall bear their iniquity. It shall be statute forever throughout our generation, that among the children of Israel they have no inheritance, but the tithes of the children of Israel, which they offer as a heave offering unto the Lord, I have given to the Levites to inherit it. Therefore I have said unto them, among the children of Israel, they shall have no inheritance.
Okay, so it's just reinforcing that again to them. They don't have any portion, anything. They're not going to, the work that they do is for the Lord. The people They have to rely upon the people to give their portion, which is the tenth, the tithe, unto them, and that'll help support them. If everybody does it, it's great. If everybody doesn't do it, it's not so great.
Well, now on every Sunday morning, when we give our tithe, we'll raise a check and lift it up to the Lord. Because it says they give a heave offering.
Yeah, heave offering, that's right. That's right. It says, when an Israelite was not giving their tithe, they were not robbing the Levite. Though the money ended up with the Levites, they were robbing God. It tells us in Malachi 3, 8 through 10. Because God received the tithe from the giver and he gave it to the Levite. Now the next portion says, some today think the tithe, since it went to support the Levites, who were in a sense the government workers in ancient Israel, is covered by government taxes of today, and that free will giving mentioned in the Old Testament answers to the New Testament emphasis on giving. We can say the New Testament nowhere specifically commands tithing, but it certainly does speak of it in a positive light if it is done with a right heart. Now, people say that, and I go back to where Jesus said, the scribes, they tithe the very minuscule part of it, and he's saying, you guys gone down to the very little bit, so it's still important. But he also has where he was going up and down the rows, watching them take the offering, and the ones that could give, they gave, and the little widow that gave her 2 mites gave everything she owed. And that's where it comes in the New Testament. We see also in the Acts, some of them give land. Some of them give all their land. Some of them don't give all their land. Some of them get their heads chopped off, not quite. Some of them die because they lied.
When he said also you pay tithes and not leave the other
Undone. That's right.
That sounds to me like
the emphasis today, I think, is more, a lot of people put on 10%, and I think that's true. That's fine. But I think that's a starting place. Because we have free will offerings. We today give missionary offerings. We have the tithe that goes to help support the church, help support Brother Everson, and then it goes on. But then we also have our missionary that we support, our youth that we support, the benevolence that we have in here, and some of ours goes out to the other areas. That's not included. That's also in addition. Like I said that one time, the guy asked him if he gave his 10%, and he like had a heart attack. He said, well, I give $20 a week. That's all I give. And that's good enough for him. If that's all he got to give, that's okay.
One day I was up at the McDonald's up on 120th up there, and then 120. But anyway, Boy, I heard this guy giving church, boy, them tithes and stuff. And I wanted to go over and say, do you pay your tithes?
Yeah, that's right.
Because the way he was talking and everything, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I was pretty positive.
He wasn't giving any tithes. You talk about it all you want, but you got to give it. And that's what it says in 1 Corinthians 16, 1 through 4, that the offerings that we give must be generous, freely given, and cheerful. If you're given and grudgingly, like Brother Everson was saying, that guy, if he even gave, he was giving grudgingly. That's not what God wants. He wants free. And it goes back to the difference between the law and grace. Okay, the law specified you need to do this. You're out of whack if you don't do this. Grace says you should do this, but this is what I expect, and it's anything else. It's what you can. Some people can afford. I know some people can give many dollars, way more than I can give, and that's okay. Those people are they made their money and they go about and do their business. That's fine. Now, it doesn't mean, some churches have taken it to mean that we need to keep the pastor poor. He gets his 10%. I've heard of some churches, offerings taken, And it was given for a purpose. But when the funds came in, it was such a big amount. Some of the people said, "Oh, we'll take some. The church will take some of that." And it's like, no, it was said it was going to be given to this, so it needs to be given to that, not
My
taken
brother
out.
went to church with one church one time when they changed pastors,
Mhm.
and this pastor insisted that everyone report to him their monthly income,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
he would know what they were supposed to give.
Mhm.
And I go to my brother, no.
I understand. I don't know if it's true, but I understand the Catholic Church. You basically do that. You have to fill everything in, and they, if you don't give it, they've done you. If you're a good Catholic, you're going to be given your portion.
I know a couple of churches, one of the neighbor went to, and they like for you to fill out a deal, want to know your income, and,
Yeah.
and also send little letters, reminding you that takes away to me the love of it.
Yeah, it's not the generous, it's not the freely given and all that. You have to give it. For a few people as we have here, they give generously.
Oh, yes.
And that's what the Lord wants. He wants it. Now, you can't compare people either. You can't compare churches. I mean, some churches are giving all they can just to keep the bills or even keep the doors open. They can't even afford to pay their bills hardly. But that's God wants the best from us. Just like He wanted the first fruits from the Levites, from the Israelites, He wants our first fruits, the best that we can do, whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be money. If we can give our time, if we can give all this stuff, that helps too, because church doesn't run by itself. One person can't take care of everything.
I know a church that my cousin went to, they were doing a fundraiser for a certain project in church, because the church needed some repairs.
Sure.
Well, they got it all the fundraiser, they got the money raised and everything, and then the church decided to use it for something else.
Yeah.
And my cousin said, "That's it, I'm gone."
Well, it's not. You got to do what you say.
Yeah.
And that's
That's
part
what
of it.
they were saying too.
Yeah.
I love you all, but if that's what how you're gonna treat after you told us what you really were gonna do.
Right.
It's time for us to move on.
Now, when we have an offering, we say, the last couple of offerings of the month is for our general expense of the church. That covers a lot, because we got to keep the church running. There's a lot of things that comes in. Some of the things you would say, "Oh, why do we need that for?" Well, if you want to be on Facebook and if you want to do stuff, I have to pay for stuff back there, and I have to pay for some internet costs that we have here and different things like that.
By the way, it's nice that you're doing all that and we don't have
Well,
to do it.
I'm glad that we can do it. When it goes down like it did last week, it kind of throws a wrench in everything, but we still got it out there. It's not quite as.
I have had more than one pastor come when we're talking and tell how good. In other words, it wasn't shoddy.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that, brother.
It's really easy, and I tried to look and find the easiest thing to look. There are you can make it more professional, but it takes a lot of learning and a lot of doings back there, and then you have to take it home. And some of the people I know that's what they do. They don't do anything live now, because now they're getting, well, if I say something, I want to cut that out, and don't want. Well, it's kind of like this is live television, people. That's the way we do.
She doesn't say anything wrong. And you are so good at what you do. But I'm glad that what I can give is just use however you all want to use it for, because that's what I feel like I can do.
Numbers 8, I'll go ahead and read the last. It's a long one too. 25 through 32. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Thus speak unto the Levites, and say unto them, When ye take of the children of Israel the tithes which I've given you from them for your inheritance, then ye shall offer up a heap offering of it for the Lord. even the 10th part of the tithe. And this, your heave offering, shall be reckoned unto you as though it were the corn of the threshing floor, and as the fullness of the winepress. Thus ye also shall offer a heave offering unto the Lord of all your tithes, which ye receive of the children of Israel, and ye shall give thereof the Lord's heave offering to Aaron the priest. Out of all your gifts ye shall offer every heave offering of the Lord, of all the best thereof, even the hallowed part thereof, out of it. Therefore thou shalt say unto them, when ye have eaten the best thereof from it, then it shall be counted unto the Levites as the increase of the threshing floor, and as the increase of the winepress. And ye shall eat it in every place, ye and your households, for it is your reward for your service in the tabernacle of the congregation. And ye shall bear no sin by reason of it, when ye have heaved from it the best of it, neither shall ye pollute the holy things of the children of Israel, lest ye die. So what it's talking about, you said, well, he already knows that. He just said that. No, what he said is the people will give their heave offerings, their tithes, their offerings to the Levites. The Levites is the big group. Now the Levites, when they get that, they have to tithe their portion to Aaron and those, the priests, okay? So you know what we do today? When the church gets our tithes, we give 10% to our headquarters, because that's following that type of an example. That, there's people above our church that they're doing the work. They keep us in visit. They help us, with the monitoring things and keeping things up and all these. That's part of that. It helps go to them. So you can see, even though they are doing it, the priests, they get a portion of it also.
The Levites didn't have money earning jobs, right?
The Levites didn't, and the priests didn't either.
Yeah, right. And so they were given a salary of some kind.
They were given the offerings, the things like that, and the money.
From that.
From that, then they gave their offerings. If I got 100 sheep in, then I need to pay my 10 sheep as a Levite to the priests. Then the priests can live, and they can work, and they can do what they need to do.
As a minister to pastor, the money I receive from the church tithe, I pay my tithe to the state or the region, and that's where they get their money.
Right. They changed it. It used to be 10% each, and they changed it 20 years ago or whatever. But anyway, it's still trying to do not to be a burden on the local church, because I know some churches that can't even pay. They talk to the people in charge and they say, look, if you want a church, we got to pay the light bill, or we got to pay, otherwise we're not going to have church. So that's okay. You may not need it right now, but when you can, you need to pay it. So this wasn't the end of Israel's required giving. They were also told to leave a portion of their fields unharvested, so the poor could eat from those portions. A Passover sacrifice was also required from each family every year. That's another portion that's given in. Sometimes a temple tax was required, for the temple. That's a little later on once they built a temple, but they also had it for the tabernacle in there. And then there are also special tributes, Numbers 32 to 28. We haven't got there yet, but we'll read about that. So it looks like you go through all this, it's actually going to be more than just 10%. That it's going to be a lot higher. They put some money away also for the poor. Every 3 years, or a third of a third percent every year goes to the poor to help them, because we know there are poor people out there. They need help. It says, beside the required giving, Israel was also asked to give free will offerings. This chapter speaks of willingly given offerings, of which the heave offerings went to the priests. So there were offerings given to the first fruits, and then there were additional, the heave offerings. They said, okay, these are special, additional this wasn't also the end of their giving. They were also asked to give for special projects. Later on, they were asked to give David, got money to help build a temple. Later on, I think it's Uzziah asked it, and they had to David had to shut everybody down. Said, okay, you give them plenty. Just like Moses, he had to shut everybody down. We got more than enough right now. Well, that'd be good to have, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
We don't get that. So, haven't here yet, at least. All right, well, that's why we've got about an hour in. So we got 17 and 18. I guess we'll see y'all next week.
I'd have to write all that sacrifice stuff in.
Well, yeah, you can't. That's why we don't have to